Hello everyone, so this is going to be the first video on this channel. What I'm going to do today is play Command & Conquer Red Alert 2. I'm not sure how big of a player base there is for this game, if much of any anymore, but me and my father used to play this when I was really young, and I was feeling a little nostalgic toward it, so I thought I would come back to it and see what would come of a channel with some content in this type of area. So what I'm going to do is just give the most basic breakdown tutorial of sorts in regards to how to play this game. So if you open this game up, this is the screen that it's going to initially bring you to. You'll see you got a number of options over here on the right. What you're going to want to do is just go to single player, and you'll see another screen showing us several more options up on this right side here. If you go to skirmish, essentially, we'll get into this more later in a different video, but this is going to bring you to a number of options regarding standalone exhibition matches of sorts for this game. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to go to new campaign, and when we do that, you'll see a number of images here in the middle of your screen, and also a difficulty bar on the bottom that you can scroll to hard all the way to the right side versus easy all the way to the left side. For now, we're going to keep it right in the middle at normal, just because. So you'll see a couple of icons here, and this icon at the very top is going to be considered the Allied forces. This middle icon, which we are going to do for this video here, is the tutorial, and the bottom icon here is indicating that you would want to select to play as the Soviet campaign. So these are the different campaign options for this game. Essentially, the premise of this game is you are either playing as the Allies or the Soviets. Russia, the Soviet Union, rather, attacks the United States, and you can either play as the attacking force in the Soviets or kind of the forces attempting to repel that attack in the Allies. If you're familiar with this game, you'll notice right off the bat I do have the music turned off. The soundtrack for this game is really, really cool. It's kind of a staple of the game, but I found the best way to record audio while playing was to turn that off for now. So that's why you're not hearing that. But like I mentioned before, what we're going to do is we're going to go through the tutorial, which is this middle icon here. And when we do this, you're going to hear a narrator's voice kind of over the background of the gameplay on top of my own. So when that comes on, I'm going to try and let him talk, but I will break down more of what we're seeing on top of what that narrator has to say. I also want to mention that there's a lot more to the game than what he's saying and what you will see in this initial video here. This is just the most basic, units that you're going to see, the most basic buildings that you're going to see, and the game gets a lot more in-depth from there. So we're going to go ahead and begin this tutorial campaign. And when this video starts, we're going to start by hearing the narrator here.
There's a war on, so we have to make this a crash course. In front of you is your battlefield control interface. With this interface, you can command any soldier on the field. Let's begin with the new recruit you see in the center of your screen. Move him away from his barracks and out into the field. Left-click on the soldier to select him. Then left-click on empty ground to move him to that location. Try not to get him killed on the way to the shooting range.
Okay, so right off the bat, we're going to notice a number of things here. So up in the top right corner of your screen is your map. And this just has a very basic kind of color scheme that indicates where certain things are. So if I was playing a match...
You can order your soldier to move into the dark area surrounding
I apologize, the narrator's going to continue talking.
Indicates areas of the terrain
However,
that you have not yet explored.
So as you see in this map, you'll see a color scheme with essentially a bunch of blue squares and rectangles up there. Now, if I were playing a match against an opponent, we wouldn't necessarily see it revealed yet, but we would see blue, as in myself, for example, and then a different color indicating that they were my opponent. So we might see a similar scheme here with squares and rectangles indicating buildings and very small circles indicating units. But we might see that over here in red, yellow, green, a different color. Indicating that that is the opponent on the map. So you'll notice that initially, and you'll also notice that most of the map is dark, and essentially that just represents unrevealed terrain. So as you'll see, as we move our unit here into the black unrevealed terrain, it will begin to reveal itself as he moves into it. Now there's also a number of basic functions here, like the narrator was talking about, pertaining to our unit. So this is just the basic general infantry unit for the Allies. We are playing as the Allies. The Soviets have an entire different set of technology, units, tanks, planes, and such. So that will look completely different. But this is kind of the aesthetic that you'll get for the Allied forces. And this is their basic general infantry unit. So you'll notice that as I move my cursor around the screen here, a couple basic things. If I'm just kind of moving it all the way to the right side, it will start to scroll the screen that I can see that way for me. And likewise, if I go up to the left or down, that moves the screen for me. Now if I right click, it lets me do that much faster. So if I right click and just drag rapidly to the right or left or up or down, that's going to move it significantly faster than just scrolling it without right clicking or left clicking. So that's my speed without clicking at all. As I move across the map, you'll see in the top right corner, this white rectangle is exactly where I am, as far as where I'm seeing on the map, where I'm hovering over as the player. You can also click on this map and it will instantly transport you to whatever place you've clicked. So as I'm clicking here, unrevealed terrain, clicking here, I'm back in my base. So what we're going to do, we can also see that there's a couple ways to move your units, and this applies to all the units that we will eventually see in the game. But you'll notice that I just got the basic arrow as I hover around the map here. Now if I hover over my general infantry unit, my GI here, you'll notice that that cursor turns to a green type of shape here with these 4 arrows pointing inwards towards that unit. So that's indicating that I'm hovering over this unit. You'll also see the name of the unit pop up after a couple of seconds, and then I can left click, and I've highlighted that single unit. Now let's say I had another number of units out here. Let's say I had 5 GIs, for example. I can left click and begin to drag, and it will create that box around those units, and I can make that box as big or as small as I need to. And then once I let go of that left click, that will select the unit. You'll notice that every time you select a unit, they do have an audio saying that they come along with. That cycles through just as you select him. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our GI, and we're going to move him into this unrevealed terrain. You'll see as the terrain becomes explored, that black shroud begins to disappear.
The difficult task of commanding a single soldier, try ordering around a squad. First, select all of the men by left-clicking and holding down the mouse button. In this mode, you can drag a selection box around all of your men. Select all of the soldiers at once and order them east to the bridge.
So kind of like we talked about a moment ago, we're just going to left-click, and that allows us to create this box around 5 of these GIs. We're going to select them all, just like that, and at that point, you can just simply click wherever you'd like them to move on the map, and they will do so. Now, I know that the narrator will get into this later as well, but just because we're standing next to these tents here, you will see if you hover, only the general infantry can enter buildings, which is unique, but if you hover over any building that your GIs can enter, the cursor will change again, and this time you'll see these 3 copper-ish colored arrows pointing downwards for you. And if you hover over the army tents and click it, those GIs will enter that army tent. And then if you're in an actual game or in a version where there's actual conflict occurring, you're actually playing against another opponent or a CPU, they can fire out of that tent. But in any case, we will continue on with this campaign here. What we're going to do is move these GIs through this unrevealed terrain until we come to our next objective.
This bridge was destroyed yesterday when the Navy SEALs used it for demolition practice. An engineer is en route to repair it. When he arrives, left-click on him to select him, then left-click on the repair hut next to the bridge. Once the bridge is repaired, move your men across.
So just as we were indicated, this helicopter dropped off an engineer. That is another unit that the Allies have, and we'll get into this later, but both the Allies and the Soviet kind of players or playable factions have an engineer. Now what you'll see is in the same way that we can navigate these GIs around, we do the same thing with the engineer. Since he's only a single unit, we can either hover over him and left click, selecting him individually, or we can hover a box around him and move him that way. Now, as indicated, what we're going to eventually do is put him into this bridge repair hut. Now you'll notice that the cursor again changes when I hover over this bridge repair hut into this spinning wrench, indicating that the engineer is going to go into that bridge repair hut, and when he does so, this bridge is going to be repaired and we're going to be able to walk across with our GIs. Now, one interesting thing to note about the engineer, and this applies across the board, regardless of the faction you're playing for, the moment that the engineer enters this bridge repair hut, he's going to be gone off the map. The engineer is essentially only able to be used once, and we'll get into this later as well, but the engineer can be used for a number of things. Obviously, in this case, he can repair this bridge, and we'll come to many situations where bridges may need to be repaired. He can also, let's say that this was an opposing player here, and somehow, some way I got an engineer into his base. He could also just simply walk into any of these buildings that I indicate him to go into, and that would take that building from that player and essentially make it my building. So if I was the red player and I got an engineer right here smack in the middle of their base, I could send my engineer into their construction yard, and it would turn their construction yard into, it would turn it red, indicating that it was mine, and it would now be my building. I would have taken it from them. Also, if you have your own engineer in your base, so let's say my engineer was right there in the middle, but it was my base, I was not an opposing player, and the opposing player had attacked me and significantly damaged my construction yard, I could put my engineer into my construction yard, which would repair it completely back to full health as well. But in this case, we're going to put this engineer in the bridge repair hut.
On my way.
Bridge repaired.
Double time. Double time. Double time.
And now the bridge is repaired. As I mentioned, you'll see the engineer is gone. So we're going to run these GIs across the bridge here. And wait for our next instruction.
This is the shooting range. Select your men by drag selecting a box around the group. Once selected, left-click on the targets downrange. This will order your men to fire at these targets. Destroy all of the targets.
So what we're going to do is select our GIs like we have before. We're going to left-click and make a box around them. And you'll notice that our goal is to eliminate these targets here. So again, the cursor changes. It's a very common theme for the cursor to change when you've hovered over something that will result in an action from your units. So as you can see, we got 4 red arrows pointing inwards towards what I'm hovering over, indicating that the GIs will attack this if I left click. Another interesting thing about GIs is they have 2 options in terms of the fighting position you want them in. So they can stand up just like you have on the screen here, or if you press the D key on your keyboard, they will dig in, so to speak, in a defensive position. And when they're in this defensive position, they're much, much stronger and more difficult to eliminate from the enemy's standpoint. So from here, you'll see we're going to click over here on these targets. These GIs are going to eliminate these targets.
Has a special symbol on him when he's selected. This unit is a veteran unit. Veterans are tougher, stronger, and can fire more accurately than ordinary soldiers. Double-click on the man who is set up in a defensive position to order him to move out. Now, order your men to move on up the road.
New terrain discovered.
Okay, just as the narrator discussed, this guy, as you'll see, has a star on him. He is indicated that he is a veteran, so as your units get more experience, they destroy more of the enemy's units. You'll notice that some of them begin to receive this veteran status, so this guy with a single star on him is slightly stronger, both in firepower and in armor, than these other 5 GIs who do not have that star. When it comes to the rankings with these stars, Initially, the star that you'll get is obviously 1, and then after that, if this guy were to get upgraded further, he would jump immediately to 3 stars, and he would be at the maximum level that he could be at. It skips directly from 1 to 3 stars when it comes to achieving the veteran status.
On my way. Hooah!
In front of you is a derelict American Grizzly battle tank. Order your men to destroy the crippled tank.
Got it.
So, just as before, I'm going to press the D key to put these GIs in the defensive position. Then I'm going to hover over this derelict tank and click it, indicating that I want them to attack that tank.
Dig it in.
It takes your men longer to destroy the tank than the targets at the rifle range. Regular soldiers are not efficient at destroying armored units. In turn, armored units may not be the most effective weapons for destroying dug-in infantry. Pick the right unit when facing enemies.
On the
Good
move.
job today. You've completed an important part of your
Moving
training.
out. Hooah! Hooah!
Mission accomplished.
Okay, and that concludes the very first tutorial that comes along with this game. It's going to bring us directly into this next tutorial here, which pertains more to construction of your base.
Today you will fight a mock battle against another commander. He will command the red team, you will command the blue team. Select your mobile construction vehicle by left-clicking on it, then order it to move out of the base. Move out to the east and try to find some open ground.
So as indicated, this is our allied construction vehicle. Essentially, this is what allows you to build anything else.
Unit reporting, sir.
So we're going to take this guy
Away, sir.
and we're going to move him to where it's indicated. We're going to put him right there in this revealed terrain.
Unit reporting. Bound
And when he
forward.
gets there, you'll notice, like we mentioned
Your mobile
before,
construction vehicle is now in open ground. Double-click on it to deploy a construction yard.
so just as indicated, we're going to hover over this guy,
Vehicle
and
ready.
it's going to take a double click to deploy him. So your initial cursor image will appear as these 4 green arrows pointing towards your allied construction vehicle. You click it
Ready
once,
to roll.
and that cursor is going to change to this square with 4 arrows pointing outwards. Now you click that one more time, and what's going to happen is this is going to deploy into our construction yard, our main base, as I prefer to call it.
New construction options.
Okay,
Now
so
that you have a construction yard, you can begin to build a base. On the right side of your screen, you can see that the icon for a power plant has appeared. Left-click on that icon to start construction of the power plant. Notice how your remaining money decreases while the power plant is building. Each building has a cost to construct. When the power plant is done building, left-click on its image, and then left-click on an empty area near your construction yard. If you see red squares where you are trying to place it, then you are either trying to place the power plant too far away from your construction yard, or you are trying to build on uneven ground.
So that was pretty well said. I only have a few more things to add. So as you can see, we've deployed our mobile construction yard, and the very first thing that's going to happen is it's going to give us the option to build a power plant. That is the only thing that you're going to be able to build at first, regardless of if you're playing as the Allied faction or the Soviet Union faction. The very first thing you're going to need to build is a power plant, and you won't be able to build anything prior to building your power plant. Another thing that was mentioned was the money will decrease as we build this power plant. So if you hover over this, these squares on the right side of your screen here, such as the power plant, you'll see that the cost here is $800, and our money is indicated here in the very top right, just right here. So we're beginning with $5,000. I'm going to click
Building.
and construct my power plant. You'll see that it turns blue, and that blue kind of begins to disappear in a clockwise way. And when that blue
Construction complete.
is all the way finished, that's ready to build. So then you left click it, and you'll see that we get this green square, which is our power plant, and this is indicating where we are choosing to put it. So the narrator also touched on this, but you'll notice that there are spaces that you can hover over that result in a red square, meaning obviously in this case that we can't place this here because there are trees. Or here, we can't place it here because it would be halfway on a mountain and halfway off of a mountain. So we need to find a level spot to put this where that whole square is green. So right here is a good spot for your power plant. We're going to go ahead and left click one more time, and that's going to deploy that right there for us.
New construction options.
Good. Now your base has power. Notice the power indicator on the left side of your build bar. Each structure you build has a power cost. If your base runs short of power, some buildings will stop working and others will work inefficiently. Now it's time to build a refinery so you can begin harvesting. Ore and gems are harvested by your miners and converted to cash. Left-click on the ore refinery icon. When your refinery's ready, place it in the same way you did with the power plant.
Okay, so in the very same way that we built our power plant, we're going to now build an ore refinery as indicated. So we're going to hover over that, and you'll see that that's going to cost us $2,000 to build. As I left-click this, you'll see that that blue is going to take over that square and begin to kind of tick down as it's built. And when that's finished ticking, that is going to be ready to deploy.
Building.
Now another thing you'll notice that was indicated was we do have a power bar, which is on the left side of our task area over here. And as you can see, we have one power plant, which is resulting in green on this power bar, meaning we have more than enough power. We're doing fine. Everything that we build will put a slight power drain on this bar, and so it's something you need to keep an eye on. As this begins to turn completely yellow or even more red than yellow, that will indicate that you'll need more power.
Construction complete.
Okay, so our ore refinery is finished here. We're going to find a spot to put it. And the ore that this is going to mine is this stuff here on the ground. So it's pretty obvious. It looks like gems on the ground or gold on the ground. And when we do this, you'll notice that there is an ore miner that comes out of it, and you'll see we will kind of hover over it while it does its thing. But that is going to drive over to this little section of money here and begin scooping it up for us.
Your new Chrono Miner will automatically begin to collect ore. Many buildings and units depend on one another. Placing a power plant allowed you to build a refinery and barracks. Placing a barracks will allow you to train infantry. Left-click on the barracks to start its construction. When it's finished, place it on the terrain just like you did with the refinery and power plant.
Okay, so you'll notice that this is our Chrono Miner, and he is the one that's going to gather resources for us. So I'm going to put him right there for now. So he will instantly go begin scooping up this money for you. Now you'll notice that there's two different kinds of gold on the ground, of ore on the ground. Now this yellow stuff is kind of the basic ore. It is the most common ore that you will find, and I'm not entirely sure exactly how much it's worth. I believe it's 500 per scoop. So if I hover over my ore miner here, it's pretty faint, but you'll kind of see on the bottom there he's got, I'm trying to hover over it, he's got 5 little empty squares. Now as I click here and he begins to mine these resources, those black squares will fill up with those squares will turn yellow. And when he gets to 5, he's full, and he's going to jump back to our ore refinery and dump it for us. And it looks like that was worth 500. So if you click this colorful gold here instead, and he comes and sucks that up, those 5 black squares that show up when you kind of hover over him or click him will begin to fill up, but blue, and we will see how much that's worth. It is worth more than the yellow gold here. So we're at 3,200 now, and he jumped back, and we're at 4,200. So the difference is $500 there. If there's gold here that is yellow, and he scoops that up, that's going to get you $500 per dump, compared to this colorful gold here that's going to get you $1,000 per dump. So this is worth more. If you can scoop that up, that is more favorable. So now we're going to build our barracks, and obviously this is what allows us to build infantry units. And this is just a very basic run-through tutorial, which goes without saying, but after we build our barracks, typically in a game, that's going to increase the options of things that we can build on the right side here. As far as I know, when we do that for this tutorial, nothing else is going to pop up. It's going to cap us off at creating infantry units here just for this walkthrough.
Construction complete. New construction options.
On the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a button that looks like a soldier. When you press that button, you will see the different types of soldiers that you can train. Right now, all you can train is a GI. Left-click on the GI to start training him. Left-click multiple times to train a series of GIs.
So as you can see, that allows for a different tab completely in our arsenal over here on the right side. So where we were initially was this little home icon here, which means buildings. This is the buildings that you can build, and we'll get into this a little more later, but these tabs here, which this one is not available to us now in this walkthrough, but this is your defenses. So this will have, if we were able to kind of click right there, that would give us a list of the defenses that we are able to build. Obviously this one here, if we were to click there, would be our infantry units that are available to us. And then this fourth spot, which is obviously not available to us either, would be our tanks, our armor that's available to purchase and use on the battlefield. So for now, we're just going to stick with our GIs because that's our only option. And I'm just going to begin by, let's just make 10, just because. And you'll notice that just like the buildings, these individual GIs will have this blue indicating that they are being trained, and when that blue comes to a stop there and that screen is completely back to its original color, that's when one GI is ready to go, and then it immediately starts completely blue again and just cycles through until our 10 GIs are created there.
Unit ready.
Okay, so we've got all 10 of our GIs. We're going to left click.
Red team may attack soon. Your GIs are armed with rubber bullets for this mission. In real combat, they would, of course, be shooting real bullets.
Okay, so we've got all 10 of our GIs here. We're going to left click, create that box around them, and move them towards this bridge.
Inside many civilian structures. Select one of your GIs, then left click on the barn to send them in. While garrisoned, your troops are protected from enemy fire. When the structure is severely damaged, all occupants will be ejected.
So like we touched on before, you can hover these GIs over empty civilian buildings and it will create that icon with the 3 arrows pointing downwards. If you left click once more, it will send that GI into that building. And while he's in there, any fire that is fired upon that building will not hurt that individual GI unless the building is abandoned completely because it's damaged too much, at which point all the GIs will eject. Ooh.
Red team's strike force has been defeated. Now,
Red team is inside that barn, so you can kind of get an indication of what that looks like here from the enemy standpoint. I actually eliminated all of my GIs, so I'm going to do 15 now in this case. It's going to take quite a few to harm that barn that is now garrisoned enough to kick those red GIs out of there, at which point I can fire upon them directly. So I'm going to build 15 GIs here, and that's going to take a couple of seconds. And then after that, we're going to cross this bridge, and we will come across the red player's base at that point, and we will go from there.
Orders?
So one thing I didn't mention before with this construction yard, regarding why this is the most important building that you have, and since I'm going to touch base on this, I'm going to create a few more GIs while I speak. So this is what allows you to build everything else, as was indicated in the power plant being available to us when we deployed our construction yard. So, for example, if you are playing in a live match and you've got your base built up here, and you've got your ore refinery, your power plant, your barracks, and your construction yard. If, let's say, for example, your opponent comes through this canyon here and attacks your construction yard directly and destroys it, you would be unable to build anything else. So that's what allows you to build buildings, period. So, furthermore, if they came through this canyon, destroyed your construction yard, and then continued on and destroyed your barracks successfully, you would be unable to build another barracks at that point because your construction yard is gone. So you would be unable to build infantry units. So at that point you'd be in pretty rough shape.
Unit lost.
So at this point, I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work. We're going to move all those guys directly up to this barn. And there we go. We press that D key to get them in the defense position. And then you'll notice that they fired directly upon that barn. The moment that barn became critically damaged, it ejected those GIs out. And at that point, the blue GIs were able to fire upon them directly and dispatch them.
On the move. Sir, yes, sir.
So now we're going to move over this bridge here. And we're going to encounter some more red GIs. I'm going to move my GIs back to the defense position. You'll notice, I think this goes without saying, but in order to begin moving your GIs once more, you have to hit that D key once again. That's going to remove them from the defense position,
Got it.
allowing them to move.
On the move.
So, we've now come across the red base, and when we did that for this tutorial, it revealed the entire base. If you're in a live match, that is typically not what happens. In fact, that's never what happens. I should be more precise. That is never something that happens. So you would need to continue exploring through unrevealed terrain throughout the entire base. So, for example, I got all my guys here. All the red structures popped up and revealed themselves to me, whereas in a live match, the unrevealed terrain would still exist up until approximately, this line or this line here. I wouldn't have any indication that his barracks was right there or that the construction yard was right there. I would need to get my guys further into that unrevealed terrain to reveal that. So, I'm not sure if I got the range here, but I'm going to move to the defensive position again, and you'll notice that there are these petroleum barrels here set up, and if
How
I
about some action?
hover over those and click them, it's going to essentially destroy these sandbags here. If not a chunk of the base, it's going to create some damage here. So you'll have to be careful of those if you ever see those in a live match, or you can also use them to your advantage, as I'm going to demonstrate here. So as you can see, that blew a pretty decent sized hole in the sandbags. I didn't attempt to do this, but if I had tried to walk my GIs directly into the base, they would go around the sandbags rather than having a way to go over them or through them. So destroying that barrel allowed me to just walk straight into the red team's base here. I'm standing next to their barracks, so I'm going to move to the defensive position again, and I'm going to fire upon their barracks and destroy that.
Unit promoted.
And I'm going to move
Moving out.
closer to the construction yard here.
We're being attacked.
Unit lost.
And go to my defensive position once more
You got it.
and dispatch these
You
GIs.
got it.
You'll notice that the GIs can fire from outside of the defense position. It's just not as strong, so they
Double time.
kind of begin firing with a sidearm compared to being in the defense position where they're firing with a more effective weapon. So we're going to move
Double
right
time.
over here with our GIs and just continue destroying this red team's base. This is obviously a pretty simple base here. There's no defenses. We'll get into some of the defensive structures later. But we're going to destroy their power plants and just continue on destroying the structures here. You'll notice, I'm not sure if you caught that, but when you destroy a building of your opponents, one infantry unit will typically pop out of there. And obviously with a force this big, I'm not even sure how many GIs we have remaining here, but it appears to be more than 10. They'll dispatch that unit generally quickly. Let's see if we can see it again. But a unit will typically pop out of that destroyed building. So it's almost too fast to even see, but a red GI did come out of that building as it was destroyed.
Double time.
Unit
You'll
promoted.
notice that a couple of my GIs received veteran status as we've kind of gone through and eliminated this base. One of them reached 3-star status. So this is the maximum status that a GI can, well, any unit can achieve, would be that 3-star indication. And this allows for
Moving out.
a number of things. They're more difficult to kill. They got a little bit more armor, higher health, whatever the case may be. They're a little bit more difficult to kill. And the range increases as well that they can fire. So this is what I find a lot cooler personally, is that this GI
Moving out. Double time.
could fire upon this construction yard from pretty much back here. you'll see that these red arrows are indicating that he can fire upon that right there. Now you compare that to this GI who has no veteran status. Let's get him right there. Whoops.
On the move.
And put him in the defense position. He obviously can't reach from there. Move him a little closer. He still can't reach from there, which is obviously slightly closer than our veteran.
Got it. On the move.
And right there he has achieved that range that he can fire upon that construction yard with. So it's not much, but it does help, and you'll see that's more applicable when we are facing some of the defensive structures. One of the most basic of the defensive structures is a pillbox, which is just a small little structure that fires upon enemies. You'll see it as we proceed with more videos here, but one thing that's cool is that, for example, a GI with 3-star veteran status can fire upon that defensive structure from outside of the range that defensive structure can fire back. And you compare that to a GI with no veteran status, or even with 1 star compared to 3, and they cannot do that. They'll be dispatched pretty quickly by that pillbox. So the range is improved slightly, but it does make a difference later in the game. So, like I touched on at the very beginning of this video, there are 2 campaigns for Red Alert 2, and one of them is the Allied campaign, the other being the Soviet Union campaign, which are kind of on opposite ends of the coin for the storyline here. When I destroy this construction yard here, that's going to conclude the tutorial that the game lays out for you. And then what it's going to do is right away it's going to go into the first campaign mission for the Allies. So I'm going to cut this video off. I will do more videos as we continue through the Allied campaign. But after I destroy this, it's going to say mission accomplished, and it will send you straight out of the tutorial into the Allied campaign. So it continues on, but just be aware that that is no longer the tutorial after this one is finished. That is now the Allied campaign. So you'll see that now.
Good job, Commander. You've defeated the
And
red
that's
team.
it.
Your basic training is
That
complete.
completes the tutorial.